Melissa Wahu is a best-selling author whose love for books was birthed in childhood, where she would soak in the imagination, character, and places that came from spending lots of hours reading and in school libraries. Coupled with her love for children, with over 20 years of experience of training, mentoring, and working with children, she pivoted her computer science background and professional experience at Deloitte into a creative who passionately creates content, books, animation, music, applications, and experiences for the next generation. With 16 published titles to her name and co-founding Sol Kids Africa with Sauti Sol, Africa's largest music group, Melissa is quickly becoming a household name and is changing the African narrative, one story at a time. And this is her story. Hi, Melissa.
Hello.
What inspired you to start writing for children and illustrating for them as well?
Being a mom,
Okay.
as a mother of 4, I read a lot with them, and we have favorite books that we love reading. And I noticed,
What do they like?
What do they like?
Yes.
When they were younger, there's a book, I think, by E.B. White, The Charlotte's Web. There's Stuart Little. We have a favorite, Pippi Longstocking. There's Mrs. Wiggle Wiggle. Can you see a trend here? There's no Mariam, Wamboi, Kerubo. And I noticed then we're reading about, because when you read, you travel somewhere. Reading taps into imagination more than visual inspiration. And you get to imagine how these characters look, what they're eating, and if they're eating maple syrup.
Yes.
And we have to see what a maple leaf looks like, or snow, that's really not in our context. And then the characters who are being described or the setting meant that they can easily tell it's London because they know how the London Tower looks like, or the London Bridge.
Yes.
From the illustrations, they can tell that this is France because they can see the Eiffel Tower.
Yeah.
But they can't tell if it's Africa, is it Nairobi?
KCC.
Yeah. Even Rwanda, do we know what the features are of Lagos? You know, so that started a conflict within me because I'm raising global Africans.
Yeah.
And there's a gap of quality global content. That's not because it's required by the school. So, you know, there's a lot of good books that are in the curriculum, the Kenyan curriculum. And they're great for teaching children, but then the mentality or the association that kids have with these books is it's schoolwork. But what about entertainment? And how do we create a love for reading? Because once a child can read, they're educated. They can read science, they can read medicine, they can read law. And the only way they fall in love with words and descriptions is by creating a setting that's relatable for them and tapping into their imagination. And so as I saw my children grow, and I got this frustration, that's what caused me to write my first book. And here we are.
Here we are. So how long have you been writing for?
Funny story.
Okay.
First story I wrote was in 2011.
All right.
Yeah, 2011.
Okay.
And it was about a boy who goes to Giraffe Center. I've gone to Giraffe Center with my son. And I picked all the things that you see along the way, a boda boda, a bus, matatu, because these other books we were reading were describing the London bus and cherry picker and all these other things that we don't have here. And he loves cars. So every time we drive, he'd point out, matatu. So I thought, okay, let me write a story.
Yeah.
And then I went online and put, you know, images. And then I shared the story with friends.
Yeah.
And then the next hurdle of actually publishing, I got stuck. So I didn't do anything. I shelved that story. So I shared it with a few friends. It sat. And then in 2019, you know, when you have a fire, you can try and put it off, but it's like a pressure cooker.
Still burning.
Yeah. Still burning.
Still burning.
And when it needs to come out, it needs to come out.
It does.
So 8 years later, I am in Naivasha and I'm looking at an acacia tree.
Okay.
And I remembered we read about the maple leaf is a symbol of Canada with my children. And they asked questions and I have never seen a maple leaf.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw online, but it's not the same as feeling it. But then when I looked around, I was like, oh, acacia trees are so common and so are hibiscus flowers. And the way I like to teach them is we immerse ourselves. So like if we were doing the maple leaf, then we'd eat maple syrup and draw the maple leaf.
Yeah.
But then I looked at the hibiscus flower. I'm like, oh, we have hibiscus tea, we have hibiscus jam, we can draw the hibiscus flower. It has all the parts of a plant. And so I wrote a story. Like within 30 minutes, the story just came to me. I scribbled it, then shared with a friend. And I told him, oh, you published some books. I have this story. And he said, send it to me.
Yeah.
And so I sent it to him. He's like, oh my goodness, you're a writer. You have stories within you. Why haven't you done anything?
Okay.
And then I said, oh, publishing, illustration. But then I compared, there's a series we read called Mr. Men that just has stick people. It's a circle and stick hands and stick feet.
Yeah.
But the stories are engaging and they're fun. They're a favorite globally. And then I looked at it and I said, oh, this is simple.
Yeah.
How hard can it be? So I sat in a cafeteria and I drew. Because when you're writing, there's a picture in your mind of what the character
you can actually
like.
see it.
Yes, you can see it. And it's so hard to describe to someone.
Yeah.
Well, it's not impossible.
Yes.
It's just hard. And so I drew and then I crayoned and I colored and then I showed my children. They gave me children are brutally honest.
Yes,
so they gave
honest
me,
feedback.
Yes, honest feedback.
Yeah.
And I improved on it. And then I scanned, like literally it was on regular paper.
Interesting.
And I scanned the images.
Yeah.
And then shared with my sister. Well, my brother's wife, but she's my sister. And turns out she's actually a trained publisher.
Okay.
I did not know that. And so she picked all the images together and put it as a draft dummy book. And this was within 3 weeks from when I wrote the story.
Yes.
To I have a draft dummy book. To I now have a printer.
Yes.
And within a month I had a book.
Wow.
And that was my first book.
Okay.
It's right there, the wonderful hibiscus tree.
Wonderful. This one at the bottom.
Yes.
Okay.
This one. So if you see the art, it's very childlike.
Very simple, yes.
Yeah, very simple, very relatable.
And you had no background in drawing or illustrating by then?
Nope.
Okay.
I didn't even know this is possible. Because what she told me was fill the spaces. So you can even see my...
Yes.
My
you used
drawing.
crayons on that.
Yes,
Amazing.
I used crayons.
Amazing.
And then maybe I used markers and paint. So like my kids told me, add bees, add... And then this one, the moral behind the story is you can't change who you are. So this seed sees at an oak tree and thinks it's mighty. So it's blowing. Germination is happening.
Yes.
And seed propagation, and it's blowing. And then it sees a hibiscus flower.
Beautiful.
And then decides, when I germinate, I'm going to be a hibiscus oak tree.
Nice.
So it creates this character that it wants to be. And then, we're in that generation of positive thinking. So it starts thinking positive thoughts.
Yes.
But there's a level where no matter how much I think, I can never change my skin color. I can't change my height.
I can't change who you are.
I can't change. I can't have smaller eyes or a bigger nose or I can't change such things.
Yeah.
So as it's germinating, it has spiky leaves and a hard bark and then long, ugly fingers. So it's now here in self-pity. Like, what on earth am I?
Yeah.
And I'm useless. And then this bird parks on it. And the bird is like, hey, how come you're sad?
Yeah.
And the tree is like, because I'm useless. And the bird is like, no.
No.
You're an acacia tree. You're meaningful and you're beautiful. And the idea is that the onion or the layers behind it is first, everywhere you go within Kenya, you will see an acacia tree.
Yeah.
So that trigger will help you remember the story. And then we did a lot of activities and an activity book around hibiscus flowers.
Beautiful.
But then the underlying story is you can't change who you are.
Yeah.
So this story came out in, a month.
Okay.
And then I remember that story.
In 2011, yes.
In 2011.
Yeah.
Is that one there, Towering Twiga.
Towering Twiga, okay.
Yes. The one about the giraffe. So this was sort of what jump-started me going back to
the original.
Yes, the original story.
Yeah.
And it just spiraled from there.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I love that you brought up your, engaging your children in the whole process. When you're putting together the stories, who are you writing them for? Of course, you're writing them for the children.
Yes.
But the parents are the ones who are buying the books for the children.
Yes.
And sometimes, of course, you'll walk into a bookshop and a child will point at a book and say, I want that.
Yes.
But when you're putting together the whole idea,
ideas.
Yeah.
Who are you writing the books for? And at the same time as you're thinking about that, do you have particular themes that you like to write about?
That's a good question. I say that I write, my books are for children aged 0 to 99.
Okay.
Because the truth is, I honestly feel adults are children with lived experience, whether it's lived trauma, lived joy, they still that child within us. And so in all the stories, I know there is an adult, whether it's a teacher, a caregiver, a parent, a guardian, a grandparent, who will see something in the story that will inspire or reconnect with their childhood. And the idea is then they will bond with their child as they're reading. So then it would start a question or a conversation. For example, in this series, Written in the Stars, it's a baby who's been born and the animals are asking. And just do a quick walkthrough so it will help answer what inspires me.
All right.
The baby has been born and the animals have gathered. And they're like, oh, there's a baby who's been born. What shall we name him? And the main animal is a rooster. As in Africa, when you hear, cuckoo,
yes,
that's how you know you're in Africa. And so the elders, who are the men, come and they're holding the baby. And the animals are the ones doing the talking because the children can personify anything. You know, it can be a stick talking to them, it can be the sun, they can personify elements and it helps tap into their imagination. And so we just go through this journey of let's look at the weather, and when I'm reading with children, I ask them, oh, who here knows what their name means? And someone will say, I'm called Rain because I was born during rain. Or I'm called Otieno, you know, because it was dark. Or and if you don't know, go and ask. So that's where the conversation with the parents starts. And then we look at the names in the family. So I ask, who here is named after a grandparent? Yeah, I'm Nyambura after my shosho, you know, and then it helps them see, oh, there is a naming process in Africa, and it's beautiful. And it serves a purpose. And then at the end, it ends with they look at the star and they decide a star has been born. So they name the baby Nyota. And so the baby's name is written in the stars. And this inspiration was from, currently, we grew up when there was Carol, Susan, Jane, and Margaret. And but the kids at the moment don't have such names. There's a shift that's happened
completely,
and it's from us parents who are also filling the gap and wanting to reconnect back with our Africanness. And so a lot of kids, when they say, I'm Neema, I'm Imani, Jabba, you know, I am Heri, Hera, all these names have a meaning. And so the parents, who are my target audience, my other target audience, will connect with the content.
Very true.
Yes. So part of my inspiration is knowing that children don't read words, they read pictures. And so I make sure I infuse a lot of Africanness in a cool and funky way. So what would an African goat look like? Let's put, you know, patterns. An African bull. I make sure there are instruments, you know, in the background that resonate with the children and African instruments. So I'm subliminally indoctrinating them to celebrate their African identity.
And how do you balance entertainment and educating?
I think all entertainment is educating, whether it's good education or bad education. As a home educator, we read a lot of good American books. And the common thing, or we watch, most of the movies we watch are from Hollywood. And the common thing is the Americans are the superheroes. And
the black guy dies first.
Yes. Always the black guy dies first. There is war in Iran and the US military come and save the day. Even the children books will have an American flag flying. And the entertainment is educating them that you're great, you're American, you're a superpower, and you're significant to the world. Which is why a lot of Americans carry themselves with a sense of confidence.
A lot of pride,
Absolutely. Versus in all the entertainment that educates us, the Russians are the bad people who must be defeated and they look hungry. And But every source of entertainment has a worldview and has a philosophy and a theme that you're trying to communicate.
And it's beautiful that you actually talk about themes. Are there particular themes like that, like you like to focus on yourself?
Yes.
Okay.
Because I'm inspired by life, I think the thing I struggled with is when I did, the first book, The Wonderful Hibiscus Tree, everyone thought, oh, so you'll do books on plants and flowers.
Yeah.
But then I thought, no, I don't want to be boxed or defined by that. So then I did the one about the giraffe, and then will this be a series about, animals? But then I also felt, no, I'm inspired by life. And this is touching on, we always ask children, what do you want to do or be when you grow up?
Yes.
And we always thought you have to be one thing. But my realization as an adult, which I hope to pass on to children, is you don't have to be one thing. There are many things, there are many facets that make up who you are. Professionally, I studied as a computer scientist. I was an A student. I got a first class, and I was headed, up the global career path. I worked with Deloitte, and I was headed somewhere. I didn't know I'm a creative. I was this person in a suit, and I loved it. I loved it completely. But then motherhood sort of interrupted that journey, and I took a break to be home. And that's when I discovered I'm colorful, and I can be a creative. And both of those are part of who I am. So even as a writer, the themes that I pick then is everything. So I have the series on plants and animals, and then I have this series with Polycarp of Sauti Sol, and the theme is fatherhood, because we're trying to redefine African fatherhood and what does that look like, and how do we show that African dads are present and they're strong and they're beautiful. And so we have the one written in the stars, and then this one, I love it completely. It's just the father's fingers, and this child is observing the dad's fingers. And so we experience this journey through the child's view of the dad's fingers. So he sees the dad coming home, he sees the dad working, he sees the dad tickling, and then it flips and the child has grown, and now the child is a dad holding his own kid's finger. So this series is that one, which is Lala Land. So this is a 3-part series on fatherhood, and we connected it with his music album called Father Studies. So every story has a song from his album, and when you buy the book, you get a QR code that takes you to the album,
and you can get to listen to the music.
And you can get to listen to it. And he's very Pan-African in his style of music and in the instruments he uses. So we fused all that together. And then not all of them have to be serious. So I have this series with Bien. Baldman, which is just based on his brand. He's a bald guy.
He is.
And this is just whimsical entertainment where the bad guy is Afroman. And Afroman is putting weaves on people, and so a fight ensues, and it's set in the 70s. So it's nice and fun and entertaining. And the different ways we've used this story is when he's performing, we have a motion comic that then plays on the screen.
Who are you targeting with this particular one?
This one, we're targeting teens and young adults, because I strongly believe everyone is a child inside. So we have a lot of older people who actually like it. Mainly because, they're either fans of Bien, or here we did a play on some of the characters. So if you look, you'll try and figure out who the characters are.
It's a comic book. Even adults would enjoy this.
Absolutely. It's a comic book, and there's a bloody fight scene, which my son insisted must have blood. And then turns out the bald man was the Afro man was actually balding, and that's why he was trying to impose wigs and weaves on people. So this is just entertainment. Then I have a series on relatable childhood memories, and this is Chikoleko. Did you used to say Chikoleko?
Chikoleko, yes.
When you've worn your shoes the wrong way.
Yes.
And my mom used to sing Chikoleko, Chikoleko, chin, chin, chin. So this is just a fun story that teaches kids how to wear their shoes. And then this one, Kantai, is based on if Kantai can tie his tie, I can tie my tie. So also just a short, small, relatable series. Again, inspired by life. And then I also have educational content, because again, I see the gap. We have in Africa, and I love that when you solve a problem in one African country, you've solved it all African
across,
countries.
Yes.
We have engineers who, in their in their Ushago, they don't have bridges that work. Or we have vets who practice in their clinics, but then up country, their animals are dying. And I think the stem of it is education. The way we learn it, it doesn't connect to real life situations. So I'm trying to change that.
Okay.
If we're learning bridges, let's try and build a bridge here. If we're learning countries, let's learn global history and connect it with African history in a fun way. And there's a book I read with my children based on the heart of Abraham Lincoln. And Abraham Lincoln travels, and there's a heart. The heart is the one telling the story. And the job of the heart was to keep the speeches and protect them.
Okay.
And so sometimes, it falls or it's blown by the wind. But at the end of it,
is some of it lost in the process?
Some pieces. So now Abraham has to figure out what's missing.
Yeah.
So it's really well written. But remember, I said all entertainment is educational. So at the end of it, what I noticed is my children knew all the places where Abraham made speeches.
Yes.
Significant things in his speech, which then made me think, do we have equal or equivalent content here? Yes, we do. I'm just adding to the variety. And so that's what made me write this Empires and Warriors series. And the cover I made sure was fun and funky so that it doesn't look like a history book. And then I take the children through a journey of African empires.
Yeah.
Because that's where we started. There was a migration. But before that, we had the Songhai Empire, the Mali Empire, the Ghana Empire. We had empires that were the first to have economies and money.
Yes.
I think the first naval battle was from an African empire. So these children go through all these empires and see where they are on the map without the physical, political, geographical boundaries.
Okay.
So that they can see we're all African.
Yeah, I'm looking at this and I'm trying to remember my history book back in high school.
Very
boring.
Yes.
Just lines after lines after lines. And I love that you're able to illustrate and just make it very colorful.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the illustrations inside were done by children.
Okay.
So I asked children, draw for me what you think the Songhai Empire looks like. And they did.
So you kind of open up the imagination as
Absolutely. I asked them, what does Mensa Musa look like? What does, a warrior?
Yeah.
So the idea was, or is, to inspire the children to start seeing stories around them. And then this is an English writing workbook.
Okay.
So the end of it, it teaches children how to write. So they'll read our source text based on that empire, and then they'll rewrite it in their own words, and then they'll add color. And a lot of the grammar books we were using will say maybe like the fox jumped over the picket fence. And then you have to add maybe quickly jumped, suddenly jumped. You're adding your adverb to it.
Yeah.
But then, which African child has seen a fox? I'm a whole 40-year-old. I have never seen
one.
Yes.
Yeah.
At least now we have a few picket fences. But then I changed it to an impala jumped over the bush. The point is not the animals.
It's something that they can relate to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then now they're not focusing on a fox, but they're focusing on how do I add color to my writing?
Yes.
And then once they're done with the empires, the kids are supposed to have like an empire festival and, get food from all the different empires. Then they become warriors. And this was inspired by, we did a book about knights in the medieval period and learned about chivalry and the one who removed the stone, Arthur, King Arthur, and just understood a lot about the European empires, Charlemagne. And this history is so fascinating.
Yeah.
We know a lot of it, but we don't know a lot about our warriors. And so immersing the children in different kinds of warriors, like the Somali warriors were one of the fiercest warriors in Africa.
That not too many of us know about.
No. There is that, the one that Woman King was made the movie by Viola Davis.
Yes.
Yes. And it was inspired by the Dahomey warriors, who are a team of female warriors.
Yes.
So then these children get to go through these different warriors, and they learn that just like knights had a knight code, warriors had a warrior code. You had to be brave. You had to know which herbs will heal a wound.
Yeah.
You had to have character. You had to be physically strong.
Yeah.
And so then we get to research and see, how did they look physically?
Yeah.
And it's beautiful. You get to see people in their six packs and their muscles and, and then after that we go through leaders. A lot of the leaders we learn historically are political leaders. So we learn Kanu or Kadu. We learn even, when we think of great African leaders who are great, we'll always think of Nelson Mandela and Wangari Maathai.
Why is it so important for you to ensure that these children get to learn the history?
Because without knowing where you came from, it's hard to know where you're going. Without knowing your identity or your roots or your depth, there'll be things about you that will feel missing, and you won't know, why am I like this? And without the inspiration of the giants before us, knowing you come from a lineage of power, a lineage of significant African history, a lineage of people who overcame slavery and colonization and are standing strong, learning about the Mau Mau fighters, and learning about even musical warriors like Miriam Makeba, learning about people like Steve Biko, learning about people like Kwame Nkrumah and how they wanted to unify Africa. That inspires, gives hope, gives purpose and identity, so that little child, when they read this, something will change. And the story that I've seen in the children who first did this book, we did it as a class. We usually used to have theme days where you can come dressed as a superhero, almost like Comic-Con.
Yes.
So the kids would come as Wonder Woman, as Batman, as Spider-Man. But then after doing this book on their own, without being told,
started changing.
Yeah, we had Lenana came for that. We had Yvonne Chaka Chaka.
Yes.
We had Miriam Makeba. And not everyone was Wangari Maathai. Because I think, we just tread the normal path. And I think what Wangari Maathai did for us is to show an ordinary person can be extraordinary.
Very true.
But we have so many ordinary people who have done extraordinary things. And just to look for them, but also learn from them and be inspired by them.
What does your creative process usually look like? Because I'm looking at, you've authored some, you've illustrated some. What does it usually look like for you from start to finish?
Mostly in the shower.
That's when all the ideas start coming to you.
Okay. When I'm showering or when I'm running, I love to run. Or walk. When I'm just alone, I think that's it. That's alone with my thoughts. And I'm reliving either an experience, a drive, an encounter, a conversation. And then it drops in me, oh, what if this story was there? And then I see in pictures. Even when I look at my notes in school, I always drew things around, which is ironical because I keep telling my children not to draw on their school books. But I see pictures when I read something. So I let the process begin internally. It doesn't have to be perfect, but there's the idea of it. And then I take the first step. I write. So I either write on my phone, I journal, I just write. I put it out there. And then I review. And in that process, then I define, if it's an intense book like this, or a longer book, I'll then need to define my characters, their environment, their background, their setting, if there's a conflict that they're overcoming, and what's the climax of the story. But if it's just, a fun story, I don't overthink it. Because sometimes, the writer's block happens when you're thinking, what am I trying to say? Who's going to read it? So I free myself from that, and I say, I'll just write. And one of the freeing things that someone told me when I published my first book is, your first book probably won't be your best book, so keep writing. And that
what did that do to you, though? Especially when you're starting and somebody's telling you very honestly that it might not be your best book. And here you are giving your heart and
absolutely.
What does that do to you?
Humbles
you.
Completely. Another person, so I guess this is where I'm talking about mentorship or the value of talking to those who've gone before you, told me it'll be a while before it's profitable. And I needed that reality check. Because, we all assume when you do your first book, bestseller, woohoo, celebrated, and I'll get that big
Let's
check.
all the money
and I can sit back. No. And then another one told me that people buy the author, not the story. And gave me many examples, like Trevor Noah. We see Trevor Noah wrote a book, then we read the book. or we'll see Lupita's book, Sulwe. Before you even pick the book, you'll see Lupita.
But how do you position yourself to ensure that they buy you and not the book?
So I have to be out there.
Right.
And I'm a very private person, generally.
Okay.
So accepting conversations like this
is putting you out there.
Putting me out there.
Yes.
It means then people get to meet Melissa and hear her story. And then they're like, oh, that's a lady who homeschools, or that's a lady who's written a book, or that's a lady who's partnered with Sauti. Then they'll be like, okay, she's shown consistency. Then we can buy her books. So having those reality checks sort of helped me know this is a slow burn, and I'm in it for the long haul. And even when I'm discouraged or disheartened, I have little moments that tell me my why. One little moment is I was doing an interview at a bookstore.
Okay.
I was doing a recording, just like this. And I'm reading, I'm being interviewed, and then this lady walks in and she sees me. And she walks in with her autistic son. He's about 8. And autistic children are very particular. They don't like disturbance, don't come into their space. You know, they exist in their own beautiful world. And then she taps him and then says, that's the lady who wrote the book, Towering Twiga. And then this is the book. And then the boy comes and he touches my face.
Aww.
And then the lady tells me, this is his toilet book. He can't go to the toilet
without
this book.
Wow.
And then she hugged me and said, thank you, because he sees a boy who looks like him.
Beautiful.
You know what that did to me? I was like, I have to keep writing, because you never know.
Pushes you, right?
Yeah, you never know who is that one child or that one parent.
They're impacting.
Absolutely. So the inspiration is bigger than profit. It's impact. And it goes back to the why. And the why was we need more books by Africans, for Africans, about Africans, but to the world. So the quality needs to be so great that when you walk into a bookstore, you'll see this Western books. You'll see a Kenyan book and you'll be like, oh, okay, and pick
something that I actually want to read, right? And enjoy.
Absolutely.
So going back to the process, I'm sorry I interrupted you. Your thought process.
Okay.
But then you have the ideas as you're showering, as you're running. Take us through the whole process.
Okay. So I pick the ideas, I write them down.
Okay.
I define my characters. Almost define how I think they look. I complete a first draft of the story, just from start to end. Not perfect, but raw. And then I look for, if it's an illustrated book, I look for an illustrator.
All right.
Or if I decide I'll illustrate it myself.
Yes.
And then working with an illustrator then forces me to actually think more about the environment. And I found they're really great artists, but a lot of them have not drawn for children. So I'll give an example. If it says the baby picked the banana, they'll just draw a baby with a banana. But then I have to help them think, no, what's the setting? Are they sitting on a chair? Are they out in the grass? Is there a building? What are they wearing? And a lot of the illustrators have done either content for NGOs or for schools. And for those, you know, the script is very clear. Barefoot child, neat hair, uniform. But then here I'm pushing the letter. So I'm like, no, child has to have dreads. Patterns have to be
very
African.
Unconventional thinking.
Absolutely. Very unconventional. If we're drawing a fish, we have to think about. So this forces me in the process to think about what I'm writing. So the landscape, so you can tell this is Nairobi. You can see the skyline. If we're under the ocean, what does an African dolphin look like? Can we add patterns on the dolphin? Can we add patterns on the fish? And this was just from conversation.
I love the fish, very, very nice. The patterns, the African print.
Patterns. We add tribal patterns. Unrelated, there actually are fish that look like this, and I didn't know that till later.
I also didn't know.
Yes, there are fish that have tribal patterns.
Okay.
I know, very cool. So then once we have a description of each page and what the art will look like, then I'll either draw or the illustrator will draw. And then we do thumbnails of each page, just a rough draft. So then that starts the feedback process of, no, the character didn't look like this. So it saves on time before we go full hog and we don't like it. And then once that's approved, then the coloring happens. And then I get all of that together, and I either work with a designer, but now I'm also learning how to do the layout.
Yes.
Because entrepreneurship is a
journey. It's a journey.
Of limited resources.
Yeah.
So at that point, then we do the layout, and the layout is, ensuring the words are visible.
Yes.
The image is on the side.
Yeah.
The font is nice and big. There are no broken, like, have you ever seen books where it just shouts? It's capital letters and so we do that and then run it by an editor.
Yeah.
And
this
then,
is in Swahili, right?
Yes, I have.
So you do both.
Kiswahili,
both
yes.
English and Kiswahili.
Okay. Yes, English and Kiswahili versions of the book.
All right.
Also because Kiswahili books are usually so boring. So how do we change and have fun?
Yes.
Fun, funky,
Swahili stories.
Swahili stories.
Yeah.
And then after that, I get, because I self-publish.
All right.
I then get ISBN number.
Okay.
And then send to a printer for a sample. And then I get my first sample, we approve it.
Yeah.
And then I do a run. But it doesn't end there, because now I have to do the marketing.
Yes.
So I have to first create awareness,
okay.
use social media, use word of mouth, go to schools, and make a big deal.
Yes.
That there's a new book.
It's
existing. So exciting.
Yes.
Yeah. And then I have to do readings with children.
Nice.
When I go to a school or a library or I invite people, then it helps demystify, especially for parents who feel intimidated to read for their children. I demystify the process. I demonstrate how it's not just reading words, it's asking questions.
Yeah.
So something as simple as, what do you see here? A flower, a drum, a man. Then the kids will ask, why isn't his shirt buttoned? And that is the engagement.
The conversations that you want to,
flow. Yes,
okay.
That we're looking for. And then now I have to look for my partners, who are usually distributors, bookstores, and make sure they have the book. So I also have to figure out the pricing is right, because I'm very passionate about accessibility and affordability. So I make sure the prices are such that when you walk in, you can buy.
Yes, it's affordable.
It's affordable.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's the end to end, from the shower to the bookshelf.
To the bookshelf. Yes. I love that. Okay.
Tax. In Tanzania, books are tax-free because they're trying to encourage reading.
Yeah.
So how are we encouraging reading? How are we encouraging writers if, there's that element of taxation? And then there's breaking that barrier of creating awareness so that everyone knows the book is there.
Yeah.
And this is what the book is about. And I feel I've just, scratched the surface.
Yes.
There's so much of opportunities where I can still penetrate. But then that challenge is I'm still the end-to-end, because I'm self-publishing.
Would you like to change that?
That's a good question. No one has asked me that. I think because I have all it's like you've gone to battle and you have all the bruises and you're like, no, this card reminds me of, and this one shows I was strong. And because I self-publish, I'm in charge of my itinerary. I'm in charge of the content. I'm in charge of the look and feel.
All right.
And I'm in charge of my schedule because my schedule is driven by the shower. So I don't know when the book will come out.
Okay.
And there's a sense of beauty and independence that comes from that self-publishing.
Yeah.
But there's a whole lot of challenges. And how I would change, there are things I would change, is to partner with a bigger publisher who then understands the market. In our context, especially in Kenya, once your book is on the CBC approves reading list, that's a game changer financially. Because now you have millions of parents and millions of children who must buy this book for school. And that then enables you to impact, to scale, to reach people. So in as much as I've resisted that, I now, in hindsight, see the value. But I wouldn't change a thing, because this whole journey is what's enabled me from 2019 when I printed the first one, and now we're in 2024. I now have 16 titles because it's freedom.
That's big. That's big.
It is, and there's many more to come because there's freedom.
Yes.
I'm not bound by a box.
Yes.
Some things work, some things don't.
And you learn.
And you learn. And now I'm inspired by Elon Musk, who's like, let's burn it and see what remains and what will work.
Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm a big book collector myself. I love to go to the bookshops get books for my kids, but technology is here. Yes. How is that changing how you do business?
I am also a book lover. In fact, when I get a new book, I sniff the pages. Yes. I love libraries. Yeah. I feel for me as a child, a library was a place where I could unplug from the world. Yeah. And I think for children who need that silence, that touch, hard copy books are still very necessary and very valuable.
And especially when they're young.
Absolutely. Yeah. You can imagine doing a read out loud of this book like this, and the child can touch versus on a screen.
Very true.
So there's value in it. However, because in life we have to leverage the advancement and the technologies that are there, I think it's important to embrace it. And ways in which I've embraced it is, first I've done visualizers.
Okay.
Of like this particular one is Lala Land, is the musical visualizer of the song. So then you have all these characters come alive and they dance and they move, and it's on YouTube.
Nice.
So then the kids can see. I know there'll be a child who will be on YouTube who's a visual auditory learner and not a reader, and they'll still get the point. Then I also have it on as an ebook. So that then if you're on Kindle, if you're on the go, because there's value of having that one gadget that has all your books.
Very true.
Versus, because books are heavy, versus having to carry all the books. Or if the page gets torn or the child, bends it, there's value in that. Yeah. And then I've also ensured the books are available as audiobooks on different platforms. On Spotify, you can search for the titles, and I have actually read some of them, and Polycarp has also read some.
Okay.
And then we add instruments and sound. So if you're saying the road was very busy and there were borders, you
can hear all that sound. That's nice. Yeah.
So then it connects with a child who learns that way. And we're now also exploring, I guess, ways in which we can embrace AI. Because as a writer who incurs the costs of illustration, I see the value. And I've seen my children playing with AI, and like my son has brought me illustrated versions of some of the stories I've written, and they're mind-blowingly beautiful.
Yes, created by a child.
Created by a child. And I think what that'll do is it'll scale the availability of content. But also it'll help children be inspired to know that they can write.
Yes.
Because a lot of times when I read to children, growing up I never met authors. I don't know if you did. Did you ever meet an author?
No.
So when I go...
Maybe the ones who used to come set books in high school.
Set books, high school set books.
Yes.
So when I go and I read for children, because I loved Famous Five, Enid Blyton, and I never pictured her as a person. I don't know what I thought she was. So when I read to children, I see their eyes widen, their jaw opens, and they're like, you wrote this. Then they start to criticize. They're like, if I was to rewrite it, I would do this and this and this differently. But what that does is it inspires them. So I guess leveraging AI and technology to help other people who want to write stories, and children also to write. Let's demystify and simplify this process.
Yes.
So will technology overtake the physical books? Not soon, in my experience, because a lot of parents still like
we still want to buy the physical books,
yes. But technology can advance and help, and we just need to move with the times.
Very true.
Yeah.
Very true. For children who are constantly changing what they like, 1 minute they're picking Chikoleko and the board with it.
Yes.
It's Kantai today.
Yes.
How do you keep them entertained and educated? How do you balance that for you?
So some things I have toyed with is I add activities at the back of the books.
All right.
So once you're done reading, because this one, the child makes breakfast.
Yes.
So you can color the breakfast, you can add a face, you can do that.
Yeah.
So a lot of children and parents like it because the life of the book doesn't end with just one read. There are activities around it.
Yeah.
And then as a parent now, when I'm reading with my children, while children get bored quickly, they can also repeat continuously.
If they actually particularly like it.
Yes, if they like it.
Yes.
So the thing is just to see what are the elements, because I get a lot of feedback. I love feedback.
Yeah.
So what are the stories that worked? And some parents will tell me, we've even hidden that book because we're reading La La Land every night.
Yes.
Every night we can't go to bed without it. So I'd say it's a mixed bag.
Okay.
But one of the things I've done is, again, try to ensure I have different varieties of stories, of characters, of sizes of books, of content, so that depending on the child's attention span, I can get them.
Yeah.
When I do readings with children, I love to add activities. So as I'm reading, they can color. If we're doing chikoleko, let's wear our shoes chikoleko and walk around. So that helps them imagine the books even more, or like the characters even more.
Yeah.
Then gives the book a bit more life before they're done with it. Yeah.
Wonderful. For somebody who's thinking of getting into the space, they're probably going to be listening to you.
Yes.
They're young, or they're in other professions. What would be your advice to them?
Write. Just write it. Don't overthink it. Remember, like I was told, your first book won't be your best, but you have stories. Just write. I envision a day when we have a whole children's section, or even an adult section in bookstores that is fully African. We're beginning to see.
You're getting there.
Yeah, we're
because I love when I go to textbook center, say for example, and there's a whole section where you get local authors.
Yes. Yeah. But now my dream is that will be the main section.
Yes.
And then these others will be the small section. Yeah.
Yes.
So if someone wants to write about giraffes, if we both want to write about giraffes, I wrote it from the child.
Yeah.
You may decide to write it about the tongue. Someone may write about the neck. So as a child who's fascinated by giraffes, it would be great if they have 15 books on giraffes written by different people, looking different, sounding different. So for anyone who wants to write, there's a huge gap. There's a huge opportunity to just write. Keep writing, keep drawing if you're an illustrator.
Yeah.
Just push the content there. The thing about being a creative is you're a visionary. And that means you're existing in a time that the rest of the population doesn't exist in.
Yes.
Which is hard, because you're trying to carry everyone.
Everybody,
to go there. So you'll see that with musicians, with poets, with filmmakers. That's why we have a lot of sci-fi movies, like Back to the Future. And then now we're like, oh my goodness, this guy is new.
Yes. They saw it, we didn't.
Yes, because creativity is more like a prophetic ability, if I can put it that way. You're almost speaking things into being.
Yeah.
And so that means this book, maybe 20 years from now, was when people will think, this book really makes sense.
Yes.
Or this art really makes sense.
Yeah.
And so then as a creative, just the encouragement for a writer, for whatever you are, just put it there. Picasso was celebrated, after death.
Later. Yeah.
And the same is true of a lot of artists, which is sad. And I hope that won't be our case.
Yes, and that's the reason. One of the reasons why we're actually doing this series.
Yes.
You need to be able to celebrate
the
various creatives while you're still here.
Yes.
Get to see you, hear your stories, amplify your voices. So I hear what you say.
Yeah, thank you. And the beauty of what you're doing is, 150 years from now, because this content will be available.
Yeah.
Anyone globally can watch and see, those Naiccon guys, this is what they did, and these are the authors they talked to, and that becomes history.
Very true.
Because we're living in tomorrow's history.
What are some of the projects that you want to do in the next, 5 years? What are your plans for the next 5 years or so?
Okay. I've pivoted. I'm still writing children's books.
Okay.
But then I'm also now...
You don't want to target adults and go write about love stories and things like that?
Actually, that's my next project.
Oh, really?
I'm doing an adult, young adult book.
Okay.
Inspired by history, but fictional. So, this story is inspired by real life events. Again, because I'm reading a lot with my children. So then I see the kind of content that they read that is primarily Western. And then how do I improve it?
Yeah.
So I'm working on a young adult book. I'm working on a book for moms, just to laugh about motherhood.
Yes.
all the whimsical, clumsy things, because I feel we take it so seriously, and then we judge ourselves.
Or nobody quite really prepares you.
Yeah.
And maybe reading about it and seeing that the only person going through this.
Absolutely. And to see the humor in it.
Yeah.
I'm now also doing script writing for some animations.
All right.
For African animations and helping infuse the content or the history or the story within it.
Yeah.
And for the children's section, this year I pushed myself and asked myself, it's 2024.
Yeah.
As if my plate is not full. Let me do 24 books.
Okay.
So I'm doing 24 children's books in 2024.
Yeah.
And so these are the first two that I launched last month.
Yeah.
And this month I'll be releasing 2 more.
Lovely.
So every month I'll do 2 small, short, simple books. But my goal in doing this, beyond being crazy, crazy about books, is to push the limit, to push the there's who says you must only do 1 or 2 books. I'm just trying to be crazy about it.
All right.
But then I'm also modeling, like you asked, anyone who has a story that, it's that simple. So when I have this 24, my next goal next year will then to do writing camps.
Okay.
Where at the end of it, we will leave with 24 books or 50 books written by a variety of people.
Beautiful.
But I think the best way
is... Are these children or the adults?
It doesn't matter.
Okay, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. But the goal is I'm demonstrating the possibility so that then I can equip, mentor, and inspire.
Okay.
I did a very interesting project with a not-for-profit in Kibera called Uweza.
All right.
And the idea was, how do we write a story from Kibera that's a story of hope that will inspire children who live in Kibera? Because most of the people who live in such circumstances imagine they have to leave the space.
Yeah.
And I agree. There are things about it that you need to leave. But while you're there as a child, you don't know you're poor, you don't know you're struggling.
Yeah.
Your imagination is still there.
Yeah.
You know, when you're playing with the tire or the plastic bottle, you're playing.
Yes.
Play is global. It's not defined by economic ability. So we did a call out and got writers to submit their stories. And a lot of the stories were still very 844. So the sun is shining, the long fingers pierced through the window, and my heart was beating.
How we were taught to write compositions,
Absolutely.
right?
And then I did a training, so to help them, because they had to be, for you to submit your entry, you had to have lived in Kibera. And then now help them see what are the things about Kibera that are fun. So they're like, Bano, Dufumpararo. You know, then they tapped into their childhood, and I'm like, okay, let's create characters. And what stories could we do? And then now Uweza has art galleries. They have an art gallery and they work with painters. So then we trained these painters who usually paint on canvas. What would it be like to illustrate a children's book? So again, capacity building, because I think that's really my heart of my why. Is I'm creating content, but I want others to create content. So we worked with them also to see. And again, because a lot of them do NGO work, it was so funny. I was laughing with the lady who did the book. It looked like Christmas Day up country. So I told her, a smartly dressed girl. You know, so the girl was barefoot, wearing a layered dress. I'm like, no, this is not relatable for a child in that setting. So can we put, a funky play outfit? Can we put African patterns? And it was so fun to see how we've brought Kibera alive. For these children, and we're tapping into their imagination. So in the next few years, I also want to do a lot of more such engagements.
Lovely.
So that not all the stories have to be written by Melissa, but I'm willing to work with anyone who has a story or an idea or a concept or a project, and how do we educate children, whether it's about health and eating and nutrition, or sports, or culture, or fashion. Like there's a whole range of topics
that you can write about.
Absolutely. And they all don't have to be written by me. Yes.
What do you want, as you finish, what do you want to be remembered for as Melissa Wakhu?
That's a deep question. I want to be remembered as a mother, first of all, a mother to my children, but a mother to many children. And that is, I keep laughing and saying, I'm not Mama Africa. See, I have Africa everywhere.
Yes.
But for me, motherhood means nurturing, inspiring, equipping, nourishing, warmth, love, joy. And my hope is for anyone who interacts with my content, it will be like that hug that they will always remember. And if I've touched one person to celebrate who they are, then, mic drop.
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Melissa. Thank you for opening your home to us.
And thank you for this amazing series. I think it's much needed. And thank you for telling our stories.
Karibu sana.